Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch.
You still could have planned it from the very beginning of the 90 days so that we could tell family and all plan to take time off to be there.
You guys don't think that you could take a couple days off and come to the wedding? So you were not coming is what you're telling me.
Wow. Didn't expect that to happen. So they are saying that they didn't get enough time to plan.
We would like to be at your wedding, but because of the what I'll call lack of organization or lack of planning, I don't think we'll be able to attend.
So because of the lack of organization and planning, even if it was in town, you would just not go, even if you could take time off. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure they must have had a conversation away from Jibri saying they didn't approve. But I didn't know things had gone that far.
I don't know. This is upsetting.
Why is it upsetting?
We want to see you get married and be at the wedding and support you in the wedding.
We wanted to be able to talk with you in a place where it was just us to talk about what we're noticing and like some of our concerns.
Right, there it is. So there are concerns that they have about the union, and meaning they don't think it's a good idea. So I wonder what the concerns are.
Parents can generally tell when their child looks stressed. Normally you're bubbly, excited, passionate about things, talking about wonderful things in the future, and you're not doing that as much.
We don't see that you're happy.
Okay, yeah. So the parents love him and want him to be happy. I don't know why you would just refuse to go to the wedding. So are they I guess in an extreme example, if you saw that your adult child, was in an abusive relationship, a very noticeable one, then you might be very upset about that naturally, and then would not go to the wedding because of that, or maybe even say, I can't support this relationship because I can't watch you be abused in this way. But I don't think anyone could rationally conclude that Miona is that terrible to him. In fact, at least the way the show has edited it, Miona has been fine. Their relationship seems fine, or they just haven't gone into it very much. Their relationship seems fine enough. At least there's not a lot of conflict. But so I'm a bit confused. Maybe the parents will elaborate. And of course, they would know the situation better than we would because they're there.
Because we don't feel comfortable being able to have a private conversation at home. To me, that's a concern, and you aren't even married yet. You and I have tried to have a conversation recently, and she texted or called like 8 times while we sat for 20 minutes and talked.
Well, then just politely ask him to silence his phone and don't look at his phone. I don't know. Why was she calling or texting? Was it... So that's new information. I don't think we had... I mean, we don't even know if that's accurate or if it's a pattern, but we haven't heard of that kind of behavior from her, meaning I think the mom is saying that Miona is very invasive and perhaps preoccupied. I'm not sure. So, this is classic triangulation. The parents have a problem with him, but they are focusing on Miona, or the opposite. I don't know. Let's find out.
That feels controlling, and you are not the type of person who wants to be controlled.
If you didn't have this 90-day, limit, that you have a year to decide if you're going to get married, the question I have is, would you really end up getting married at all?
No.
So the mom says she thinks that Miona is controlling. Again, she would know better than we would, but we haven't seen any evidence of that to my memory, and I could be not remembering some things. The dad asks, I think, a pretty good question. I don't think it indicates necessarily that he shouldn't get married, but would you get married if you didn't have the 90 days situation? Now, maybe Jibri would say, well, no, I wouldn't get married this soon. I would wait 6 months and then get married at that point, but I definitely want to get married, and it just means that we have to push the date forward in this rushed manner. Or is Jibri saying, I wouldn't marry her at all, or I would wait 5 years. Because if Jibri says 6 months to a year, definitely yes, then that would, and then with some additional questions, I'm guessing I would hear that he's 100% wanting to marry her. But if he said, I don't know if I ever want to marry her, or maybe 5 years from now, then I'd say like, well, if I were his father, I'd be like, well, that should tell you something, right?
I'll wait till we have more time and figure things out, but that's hypothetically speaking, and I don't have that time.
So that doesn't really answer the questions that I would ask. He's saying he wants more time to figure things. I mean, that does sound more like the latter, does it not? If he said, I wish we had more time so we could plan the wedding more, then that's one thing. But he's saying he's not sure if he ever wants to marry her, I think, right? And so, yeah, why rush it? You can say, well, it didn't work out for this time, but let's, continue long distance relationship and we'll figure it out from there. I wonder what Jibri's concern exactly is, though, because the only thing they've really shown us thus far is his band issue, which I don't know how authentic that whole storyline is, honestly, but I don't know. And the contention is that she's some sort of Yoko Ono, which of course Yoko Ono didn't break up the Beatles. The Beatles break up the Beatles, and Yoko just happened to be around and incurred the sexist lightning rod excuse and triangulation and scapegoat for all the Beatles fans out there, if you know of such things. But I mean, Yoko had something to do with it. It was mainly John. Anyway, don't get me started on the Beatles storyline, but she is being accused by Jibri's friend David that she's getting in the way, and Jibri is he's in between. He wants to be with the band and he wants to respect Miona's wishes. And so I don't know, that whole thing just didn't feel very fleshed out. I couldn't get a grasp on what exactly the problem was and what the history was in their relationship. They got in a physical altercation that, again, I question the authenticity. I don't usually question authenticity on the show, or if I do, I don't talk about it because it's just like, well, let's just use it as a jumping off point. We don't know if any of this stuff is real. But there was something particularly, I don't know. The whole time I'm just like, I don't know what is happening. Is this real? It didn't look like a real fight to me. And then there's the whole thing where, several episodes, Jibri talks about how David kicked him into a literal coma for 3 days, which in the past. And I'm like, wait, what? Your best friend and bandmate in the past kicked you into a coma? I mean, wow. I've been in some scraps with some of my friends, particularly when I was young, like nothing like that before. So I don't know what the circumstances, maybe it was an accident. That's another thing to think about is if ever any of y'all are ever in a scrap with someone, an altercation, and it feels justified, know that you or the other individual could slip, you could push, you could punch someone, not intending on killing them, but they fall in a certain way and they hit concrete. It happens all the time. People die all the time because of that, or become paralyzed, and you weren't trying to do that, but you will be found guilty in all likelihood of that, of the consequences of your violent actions. And also it could happen to you. And is it worth it? That's just always something to think about. And 99.999% of the time, it is not worth it. So usually walking away, calling the authorities or whatever. So anyway, I'm a little concerned now because he's saying, I think he doesn't necessarily want to marry, he doesn't know if he wants to marry Miona at all.
What is really keeping him in this decision to get married is concern about the blowback from Miona. That really pains me to say because I want to be optimistic, but that does not seem like it's going to be healthy in a marriage.
Yeah, so I wonder what it is exactly for Jibri. We haven't seen evidence of that somehow he's being controlled by her, that he's intimidated into marrying her. Maybe that's true. The mom would know better than I would, but we haven't seen any evidence of that. Given what we've seen on the show, I would suspect that he is unsure about his future and that he wants to agree to marry her because he's worried that if he doesn't now, because he's committed to doing that to her, that she will either break up with him or go home and drift away from him, and he doesn't want to lose her, but he also isn't sure if he wants to marry her. That would be my suspicion, but I don't know.
And I know he feels that way about me. And I don't see that with you and Miona. And frankly, it makes me really concerned and really sad. Because I want that for you. I want someone to want to be with you, to want the best for you. If that was true about you and Miona, we would be able to be at your wedding.
Okay, that was a good talk. The mom is speaking from her primary emotions of fear. I don't know what she's basing it on, but she would know better than I would. And if Jibri, this resonates with him, then yeah. If Jibri is thinking, I don't know if Miona wants what's best for me. Now, it's possible that if the band really is an authentic conflict between them, it might not be that Miona doesn't want Jibri to be happy or to pursue his hobbies, but she might be concerned that the pursuing of that career, so to speak, is not lucrative or worth the time or very conducive to a family or something, which, could very well be true, and is kind of a lost cause. So that's kind of different, right? Because it's not like a hobby for him. It's touring, and it's probably a lot of time and money poured into it. And so I don't know, though, maybe. But so the mom, instead of attacking him or trying to control him, she's just saying how she feels. And if that resonates with Jibri, then that is relevant. If it doesn't, then Jibri will be like, well, my mom doesn't really get it, so I guess we'll find out what Jibri says here.
I never imagined not being at your wedding. I never imagined that. It is going to break my heart.
My parents aren't coming to the wedding because they feel that I'm not ready to get married. That hurts. But I think that there's truth to that.
So since the beginning of the tension between Jibri and his mom started a couple months ago, I have been seeing signs of and hypothesizing a possible dynamic between the two of them in which they are enmeshed and still locked in as child and mother instead of adult child and mother. And they relate to each other in that way. And there was evidence of that in that Jibri, away from his mom, at least on the show, seemed to come across as his age. But when he was around her, he would kind of mope and whine and roll his eyes at her. And what I was talking about was that when you have a dynamic of an overfunctioner, underfunctioner, a codependent, and a needy person, they will both do what they need to do unconsciously often to play their role, and both roles will trigger the other. So if she's trying to be less enmeshed and he goes into an underfunctioning mode, it will push her into an overfunctioning mode and vice versa. And this scenario is kind of playing into that potentially, in that he's presenting a scenario to the parents that automatically causes them to say, wait, no. And maybe even to get a little strong-handed because they believe they're doing the best thing for him by not coming to the wedding. He's presenting a situation, any parent with adult children that would say, I'm only marrying her because I feel pressured by time. I don't know if I actually want to marry her at all. Any parent, worth anything would immediately say, wait. And if you, the adult child, were like, well, I don't know, then most parents just, no, we've got to figure this out. And they might even start to get angry at you and say, what are you doing? You're being irresponsible. And that's that parenting thing. And I think we're seeing an example of that. If Jibri presented this case and spoke more like an adult instead of a teenager, I don't know, but I think or at least one version of it that I could imagine is you say, yeah, I feel totally pressured to marry her within 90 days. I do want to marry her, but I'm a little unsure. I wish I had more time, but I don't really have the time. And I am willing to take the leap of faith. And there's always going to be a question mark, regardless of how long I take to make sure that she's the one for me. But I am almost positive she's the one for me, and I'm pretty sure things will work out. And if they don't, they don't work out. But I'm pretty sure that things are going to work out. And, I could see how it might seem a little foolish from the outside, but I want to do this, and I'm willing to face the consequences if something goes wrong. But I don't think there will be, because otherwise I wouldn't be wanting to do it. Again, I wish I had a little bit more time, but them's the breaks, and I'm going to do this. So that acknowledges the reality and the landscape, but also presents a case for, I've got it under control, I've thought about it, you don't have to do anything about it. And so that would provoke the parent, or give the parents an opportunity, particularly the mom, since I think she's more enmeshed with him than the dad is, that she would just say, oh, okay, well, or if the mom, so if he comes at her as an adult saying those kinds of things, and she starts to overpower, then you just keep like a broken record. You don't go, Mom, knock it off. Okay, that's playing into the role. You just keep going, and then eventually she has to fall into line, or else the relationship is going to she's going to cause more problems, and it'll hopefully kind of feel that way. Especially if you're saying, Mom, I kind of get the feeling like you're trying to tell me what to do, and that hurts my feelings. I've got it under control. I appreciate that you care. It's great, but I got this. It's okay. You don't have to do this all the time. You're released from responsibility. I want you to love me. I want you to care. But you've done all that you can to parent me, and now it's up to me to make my own choices. You just keep saying those kinds of things, and usually parents won't persevere with their overpowering, because the reason why the conscious and real, authentic reason why codependents and overfunctioners do what they do is because they love the person. They want to help. That's part of it. There's other parts of it too.
And to be clear, whatever you decide to do, it will never be a question of us not loving you. We'll love you forever.
I love you, Jibri. I want you to be happy. And you're telling us you're not happy.
The other possible unconscious element to this is that for Jibri, if he is in this underfunctioning, dependent relationship with the codependent mom and the overpowering, overfunctioning mom, then one of the conundrums, dilemmas of the underfunctioner is you don't feel capable, especially when you're around the overfunctioner. So you feel like you need advice or guidance, and you feel incompetent. But on the flip side of that coin, you also feel very resentful of a lifetime of being made to feel incompetent. There's a part of you that's like, yeah, I deserve that. There's another part of you that's like, hey, I don't deserve that. And there's often an expression of that anger in a very passive way, sometimes through rebellion against what the parents want. So I don't know, but for people in Jibri's position, he could be feeling incompetent and also self-sabotaging himself to suck in the overfunctioning because he's used to that. Plus, he's not used to making tough decisions really on his own. So he's just kind of flailing and hoping someone tells him what to do. And on the flip side of that coin is this desire to piss off the parents, particularly the mom, I think, by doing what he knows that she doesn't want him to do, and thereby saying unconsciously, I hate you, or I'm angry at you for the way you've treated me all these years, and I'm my own man and I get to do what I want to do and you can't make me, rather than just simply and more healthily sitting there and thinking, do I want this, And all of you with kids know that kids will do this. Not all kids will do this very often, but all kids do it to some extent. Some kids do it a lot, where you are feeding them at the age of 4 and you have made their favorite food, but they're pissed off at you for some reason or in a bad mood, and they refuse to eat their favorite food that they love. And they're just doing it emotionally because they just don't want to give in to you. And you're just like, well, will you please eat something? Would you eat anything else? No, I won't. And of course, they need food, and in all likelihood, they want to eat, but they more want to express their anger through defiance. So hopefully you have those experiences when you're 4 and 7 and 13 at age-appropriate levels. And if that is navigated well enough, the adult man doesn't have to resort to that to know who they are, to have identity, and to express anger.
And then what's gonna happen for me is I'm gonna say all of this,
I'm gonna get married to the goddamn music and the art.
No, you should focus on us if you want this to work. Do you want this to work?
If it's gonna be like this, no. If you're gonna be stubborn and in your way and I'm only doing my wedding and I don't wanna talk to your mom and you don't care to have the relationship, like, that's a big red flag for me.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think that they have the capacity to get along a lot better if they were to see through the fog here. But he's saying, okay, so to catch you up, they are talking and he's saying, yeah, you know, my parents, they're not really excited about us getting married. That triggers Miona. She's like, oh, your parents, you know, your mom has been criticizing me since I got here, which is at least what we've seen kind of true. And seemingly, so the conversation in the laundry room around her clothes didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me and seemed to be slut shaming. I don't know. And then the mom's narrative afterwards was that Miona was somehow trying to, I don't know, that she was nefarious in some way. And I'm like, what? And then the mom seemed to be kind of planting seeds in Jibri's mind back then that didn't seem to have any basis. I don't know, maybe there was a basis because sometimes they edit things out on the show. But then, so Miona says, well, of course your mom doesn't want us to get married because she's been against me from the beginning. And so it would be natural if you're Miona to be hurt by that. It's just like, I've been nice. I've done everything I've been asked to do. And now they're getting inside your head and you act like a child when you're around them instead of standing up on your own 2 feet. And so, you know, they're getting in the way and I'm bothered by that. So she was saying that. And then he is now concerned because he's thinking, well, I can't have you against my parents and my parents against you. That's not going to work in my life because I love my parents and I love you. So he's kind of putting his foot down, which isn't a good idea. She just listened to Miona and, you know, say, well, you know, but I love my mom and I don't know what to do here. So it's upsetting to see them go down a road of conflict that I don't think is necessary.
You know, the other thing that my dad brought up, which I know you probably won't like, but he said, why don't you guys postpone the wedding and do it later?
Would you?
Continue to have our relationship and get to know each other more and get married at a later date when we have more funds and we're financially stable?
Okay, so absolutely. I think a lot of people would think that's definitely the wiser choice. Why rush things? Just give it some more time. But, Jibri, you have, I gather from Miona's face here, that this is extremely new information to her and could be very hurtful to her, could feel, at least in this moment, like he's rejecting her and doesn't want to marry her. So he should have delivered this differently. He should be like, honey, I'm really sorry. I love you. I definitely want to marry you, but I just feel like I'm just not ready and I want a little bit more time. Instead of just like dropping it like, well, yeah, of course, when they've been, I think, talking about getting married during this 90-day period for months now. So this isn't going to go over well with her.
You wouldn't do it, would you?
No, I would leave your ass if you want that.
Well, that just says a lot right there.
I mean, it kind of says something. I think she's more just reacting to what I was saying earlier. I mean, just imagine that a couple weeks before a wedding that has never been questioned by your partner, suddenly, because they had a conversation with their parents, suddenly it's just like, nah, I don't think I want to get married. You would be very scared and hurt by that. You don't want to transfer that into anger, but it's common to do so. But there'd be huge concerns. It's just like, wait, so someone just talks to you for a half an hour, suddenly now you don't want to get married anymore? Like your dedication and commitment to me is that fragile? Even if we did get married, like how am I supposed to know that you're not going to, renege on all sorts of things because someone talks with you about this? So she has every reason to be upset, but I hope she kind of takes a beat and explains why she's upset. And I hope that he could apologize for. It's okay that he has that stance, like I said, but you want to deliver it in an empathic way.
It says a lot about you, what you just said. I would never agree on the option of continuing to date him and go back to Serbia. That sounds more childish than anything else that he ever said. We were planning for this. I think that people are putting even more stress on him. Jibri should grow up and stop thinking what they're thinking.
It's interesting that she sees it that way, that it's him being a child. I mean, if anything, it's him being an adult by having some caution, since I don't know how much they've spent in person, but certainly on what I would recommend if someone were a friend of mine. I know it's not a long enough time in person to be able to know truly if you're going to work out. So, and you never know truly, but you can raise the possibility of knowing compatibility or incompatibility if you spend more time together in person. But anyway, but she sees it as childish, and I wonder two things. One, if she has witnessed him with the mom and is thinking, well, if something is going wrong, it must be the childishness emerging in him, because that's usually what I don't like to see. Or if Miona has a similar dynamic with him based on her history, that she is more of a dominant individual, an overfunctioner over him, and he is attracted to her because she is like his mom in the enmeshment and the overfunctioning and codependency. So, yeah, it's interesting that she's going there with the narrative.
Parents get in your head like a 15-year-old. You're almost 30. What you talking about? You want to get your life together, or you want to continue dating and doing whatever you're doing?
I'm not, trust me.
I mean, yeah, I actually, if that's where she's coming from, I guess that is childish, that you make a decision for, I think, a number of years to get married to someone, or at least for a number of months, and then you have one tiny conversation with your parents, and you're just like, yeah, I guess I don't want to get married. That expresses childishness either direction. Either you agreed to get married without really thinking about it like a child would, not like children would, but not like an adult would, or you're so childish that you just listen to your parents because they're your parents instead of thinking for yourself. So, if that's where she's coming from, that makes at least some logical sense. I don't know if it's true. All right, well, if you want to support what we're doing here, the best way you can do that is by becoming a patron of the YouTube channel and podcast by going to patreon.com. We need to pull a lot of time away from our day jobs in order to do all this sort of thing. And the only way we can do that and still pay our bills is if people become patrons of the podcast, patrons of the YouTube channel. And thank you to everyone who already has. Also, particular thanks to the upper tier patrons. Only if you can afford it, of course, but if you can and you care to and you like what we're doing here, then that would be awesome. But up to you. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.